This week on Quality Digest Live, can too much ice be considered a form of Muda?
Plus, the power of visual scheduling. That and more when we come back.
This episode of Quality Digest Live is brought to you by Mitutoyo America. Whatever your metrology challenges, Mitutoyo supports you from start to finish.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for May 27, 2016. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Jeff Doer, CEO of Quality Digest, sitting in for the vacationing Dirk Ducharme.
That he is, and I'm Quality Digest publisher Mike Richman. All right, we're going to start the show this week with a blog post from the U.S. Economic Development Administration, which is a bureau within the Department of Commerce. And we linked out to their post at NACI, Diversity is the Mother of Invention in Monday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. So what's NACI, you might ask? Well, NACI stands for the National Advisory Council on Innovation and Entrepreneurship, and it was created in 2010 to assist and advise the Commerce Department on issues relating to the economic competitiveness of the U.S. business environment. Naturally, that means things like innovation and entrepreneurship, the I and the E in NACI, NACIE, so that gives you the name right there. Well, the council has had some really notable successes over the years, a few notable things that they mentioned in the article, including helping increase innovation and entrepreneurship at 142 U.S. institutions of higher education. They also published the first U.S. government report on the digital platform or so-called gig economy. And they also suggested enhancements to the Small Business Innovation Research Program to improve its success rate in turning innovations into successful businesses, which of course is the important part of all this, is to not only have the innovations, but also to then turn those into businesses that can work, right? So you can see that this council has an important role to play in fostering innovation that improves the economic outlook here in the United States. And now, right now, as a matter of fact, you can apply to join NACI and help them in their efforts. Applications can be found on the EDA's website, which you can link to in the story found just below this video player screen right down there. The deadline's coming up in just a few days. That's why I said it right now, on June 1st. So if you have experience in innovation, entrepreneurship, and mentoring, that's an important one too, mentoring. If you have an ability to help people with their vision and help them bring their vision to the next level, well, NACI wants you. So take a few minutes and apply to join NACI. Again, the application information is found right in the story link right below there. It's good stuff. I mean, innovation, entrepreneurship is very important.
Absolutely. I think it's terrific these networks are being set up this way.
It is, absolutely. Good stuff.
Well, here's a standard story that all of us should have an interest in. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration report, a majority of paramedics are not strapped in when working with the patient in the patient compartment. It isn't that ambulances don't have restraints in the patient compartment. They do. It's just that many paramedics choose not to use them because they say it's just too difficult to work with a patient. We read accounts to this effect in several EMT forums that we browsed.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now, according to Jennifer Marshall in her article that ran just yesterday, Safety Standards for Ambulances, STAT, there are an average of 4,500 crashes involving ambulances each year. Of those, 84% of emergency medical service EMS providers in the patient compartment were not wearing a seatbelt or some other restraint. 84%.
Yep.
The report also found, and this is frightening, that 44% of the patients were ejected from the cot in serious crashes. Now, Marshall is a physical scientist within the Standards Coordination Office at NIST and has 15 years experience in technology. Equipment out because it isn't secured, or doors with sharp edges swing open, or the paramedics crash into sharp corners. There's just a lot that can go wrong if an ambulance is involved in a crash. And Christopher, if you can show that photo of all the jumbled up equipment that is there in an ambulance after a crash.
That's after a crash, yep.
And so with all that in mind, from 2010 to 2015, the National Safety Institute of Occupational Safety and Health partnered with the ambulance manufacturing community to conduct crash tests of entire ambulances, including the cots, the seats, the cabinets, the equipment, the mounts, everything. Then the EMS community and manufacturers partnered to develop new designs that would make the ambulances physically safer. But that was just the vehicle safety aspect. Standards developers realized that the paramedics also needed to have to do their jobs. And from the forums that we were reading, if they don't feel like they can tend to the patient, they are not going to buckle up.
Right.
So standards developers also looked at how EMS providers interact with their patients and the workspace in the patient compartment. And based on the information collected, the developers came up with more than 200 individual criteria that focuses on improving seating and restraints, workplace communications, and storage. And the design goal was that everything needed for patient care and the patients themselves would be within arm's reach of strapped-in paramedics. And this reminds me of Taiichi Ono, one of the gurus from Japan in Lean. And of the 4 goals for improving a work process, making it easiest is the most important thing. And to me, this is a wonderful example of that. So here's the punchline. In March, the Commission on Accreditation of Ambulance Services released its ground vehicle standard for automotive ambulances. And last fall, the National Fire Protection Association released the 2016 edition of the NFPA's 1917 standard for automotive appliances, which incorporate the recommendations from the EMS community. And of course, NIST was involved in the development of those standards.
Well, it's interesting, you think about this, and I've thought about this in the past. It's like you see these ambulances flying down the street, highways, and you think, I wonder if they must get in crashes. Of course they get in crashes, and it's like the people that are working there, those EMTs, they're always going to be focused on the patient. They're not going to worry about their own safety so much. They need to. So the idea that you need to build these systems with their safety in mind, yet their ability to tend to their customers, right, in mind as well, is really kind of intertwined really closely. So they've done a good job with this. I think it's interesting to see how it all turns out.
Absolutely, and I personally saw this. My daughter, who had severe asthma attack some years ago, we went to our regular doctor, and then she was shipped by an ambulance to the hospital. And it got to be quite scary and quite serious. Sure. And there were 2 paramedics in the back, not strapped in, walking around, moving around. Mm-hmm. She was strapped in. I was strapped in and safe. Yeah. Fortunately, because it was Seattle traffic, we were moving about 5 miles an hour. Right. But I can imagine, as you say, if you were moving at 65 or 70 miles an hour, what could happen to that paramedic?
Well, next we need a standard to address dogs and flatbeds. I've always wondered about that one too. Yes. Dogs in the back of flatbeds, and I'm like, how do you strap them down? All right, well, thanks, Jeff. All right, well, would you like coffee with your Muda, is the question asked by Bill Levinson in an article right there that you can see that appeared in Monday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. Well, this latest contribution from Bill Levinson is all about the value or the lack thereof that companies deliver to their customers, whether intentional or not. And that any product, part, process, practice, or procedure that is non-value added, essentially it steals from the customer. So why do they do that, right? I mean, no one should have to pay for needless overhead and waste. As an example, Levinson points to the abundance of ice in a typical beverage purchase at a typical restaurant or food service retailer. Now, he mentions Starbucks prominently here, but to be fair, I think pretty much anywhere you go that will sell you a drink and prepare it for you behind a counter is going to load that drink up with ice unless you request otherwise, and most people don't request otherwise. They just take the drink that they get and they drink it with all the ice. Well, he also points to the example of new customer-only offerings from, say, power and gas companies or cable and broadband providers. There's a lot of examples of these types of things where these amazing offers are promoted to those that switch providers only to go away after an initial period of time, say 3 months or whatever that may be, right? As Levinson recommends, you can simply mark your calendar, your Outlook calendar, or whatever you use, Google Calendar, to drop that service and switch to another after the special rate expires. So you're kind of constantly churning providers, right? Sure. But as in asking to hold the ice in a drink, this is a matter of the customer taking a little ownership of his or her own customer experience. And unfortunately, most don't. And that's what these companies are really relying on, is that they're going to be able to deliver less value because the customer isn't aware of it or isn't going to be sensitive to it or asked not to, right? And that's really the problem.
Yeah, you just take what you get.
And most people do that, I think. I probably do that more often than not, I think. But again, this is an example of Muda, of waste, really. I mean, if a utility company, if you think about this, if a utility company can offer a low rate for a certain section of their customers for a certain period of time, well, why can't they do it for everyone? Why can't they, change their process so that that rate can be the standard rate or a lower rate for everybody? I mean, are they in the business of delivering really maximum value to their customers and thereby driving loyalty, or are they really simply trying to boost the bottom line at every conceivable opportunity, right? I mean, that's a good question.
It does feel a little disrespectful when it says in those letters, new customers only.
Yeah. You say, well, heck, I've been a customer of yours for 10 years.
Exactly.
Why can't I get that, right? I mean, I have to leave you and come back. I mean, that's not very smart. Well, another perspective on this, on a similar question, I think, was raised in another article that we ran this week. Barbara Cleary's, interestingly named, The Shrinking Package, which ran in Thursday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. And despite what you all are thinking out there, the shrinking package that Cleary refers to in this article are foodstuff that are offered for sale in ever smaller containers that you may find. I mean, for instance, you might find a gallon of ice cream. What was a gallon of ice cream once you're used to buying is actually now like 3.5 quarts. It doesn't say 3.5 quarts on the label. I mean, it doesn't say a gallon on the label, but that little 3.5 quarts on the label is really small, so it's hard to see, right? Or you might find that what was once a pound of hot dogs is now more like 14 ounces. And again, I mean, they own up to what their actual size is, but for sure they don't make a big deal of it when they recreate their packaging, and they doubly sure don't lower the price when they shrink their size, right? I mean, if it was $5.69 for a gallon of ice cream, if they bump it down to 3 quarts, it's going to still be $5.69 or $5.99 or whatever, right? Like Levinson's overflowing cups of ice, this issue really that Cleary raises, it devolves to companies answering why they're in business. I mean, yeah, they're all going to say that they're in business to make money. But how? I mean, is it by being completely transparent to your customers and building long-term relationships, or is it by trying to squeeze every last penny out of every single exchange? And, in these cases, I often come back to the wise words of Philip B. Crosby, and his definition of quality was being in conformance to customer requirements. And I think that shortchanging your customers or building a system that in such a way that is going to suboptimize the delivery of value, it's a death spiral. And there's really just simply too much competition, literally across the world today, for companies that think in the shortest of short terms to survive for any period of time at all. And that's really what Levinson's getting to here, is this idea that value isn't just something that you do because you want to do it or because the customers want it. Right. You do it because you build long-term relationships. Customers who get good value and realize it and you publicize it properly are going to come back and be long-term customers.
That's the key, is to let the customers know, to communicate just the value that you're doing and the kinds of things that they're benefiting from.
Yeah, and it's not that hard. It shouldn't be that hard, but it seems hard for a lot of these companies to fulfill that. So it's good words of advice there from Bill and Barbara Cleary to think about value when you're in quality assurance and trying to deliver value to your customers.
Although I think the first thing that occurred to me when I read Levinson's article was how the pendulum kind of swings the other way. When I was working in Europe last year, I could not get a soda pop with ice to save my life.
Yeah.
Nowhere. Could I have ice with that? No, we don't serve it with ice.
Yeah, right. Crazy.
So it's all or none.
Yeah, it's different.
Well,
good stuff.
Visual management is a very hot topic these days, and we're constantly seeing new ways to utilize this tool. In fact, we're seeing that it's much more than just a tool. It's actually an entire approach to workplace communication. In many companies, visuality in the workplace is viewed as a simple and helpful tool to simply push out information, inform employees of tasks and their status. And there are countless LCD screens out there with instant computer updates that are doing this right now as we speak. However, to get even more out of visuality, our guest today has some interesting thoughts on using a lower tech approach and using it to get to root causes of scheduling problems. So here now to discuss this with us, and someone I've had the pleasure of learning from in her workshops, we're very happy to welcome Dr. Gwendolyn Gould of the Visual Lean Institute, an expert in visual workplace concepts. Now, she's written 7 books and 2 of them have received the Shingo Research and Professional Publication Award, and she hosts a live radio show with 70,000 listeners. Gwen, thanks for joining us today.
It's entirely a pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
And Gwen, I must say something quite up front. Of all the workshops and books I've attended or read on quality-related topics, you by far, by at least an order of magnitude, have the best collection of examples.
Thanks. We have about 72,000 in our database. I've been collecting them for about 35 years, so I'm glad you noticed.
and what I like about your examples is there's always a before, a middle, and an after.
Exactly.
Excellent.
Well, so Gwen, let's kind of start off with a big picture to get everyone on the same wavelength. What is a visual workplace?
Thank you, and thank you for not using the word visual management. Let me just say, show my hand on this. Visual management is a subset of the visual workplace, and somehow or other people are confusing the two. But it's easy to straighten out. The visual workplace is about sharing information. The definition that I use is it's a work environment that is self-ordering, self-explaining, and therefore self-regulating, where what is supposed to happen does happen on time, every time, day or night, because of visual devices. And those last words, because of visual devices, are the pivot point. If you take the devices away, you have a workplace that can't hold what is supposed to happen for a very long time. It's unsustainable. And what's supposed to happen, of course, is our standards, our SOPs, our specs, our customer specs. So the visual workplace is a gigantic adherence mechanism. Although it is misunderstood as being just kind of a bunch of tools, it is in fact strategically an approach that is equal partners to operational excellence. The other side is your lean. So it's a language, Jeff, the way I would describe it is that it is our intelligence embedded into the living landscape of work through visual devices. Each of those devices represents some part of our understanding of our operational system, captured, in place physically, embedded, a permanent part of the operational landscape until we decide to improve the device or extend it.
Okay,
That's what I would say.
So let's start off with, I kind of set it up with your great examples. So let's first take a look at the Maytag example. Can we just, Christopher, show this first one of the MDC receiving desk? And can you just describe what we're looking at right there, Joanne?
Yes, well, this is a little bit of a hot topic, but I'm going to try to make it short. What we're looking at is a computer. It's an old one, true. This is at a Maytag plant in Iowa. And in this computer is all the information you ever could want, including information related to the receiving desk. And the supervisor there would often go to that computer to derive information, but found it very burdensome. So what we're going to be looking at is...
Did we lose Gwen? I think we might have.
There, you're back.
So perhaps I was at the point of all the information was in the computer, but it wasn't available to the supervisor when and as she needed it, and she needed to know about the changes when they happened. So what she created instead is a visual display, and this would be the blue board, if you would show that, please.
Okay, it's up.
Thank you. She decided to get physical and therefore visual about the information she needed to feel a sense of control over her job, which was supervising the receiving desk. And what she did was create a display that holds all of her trucking vendors, because she was always watching for when is this delivery going to happen? Is it going to happen on time? And each day she populates the board with the actual paperwork of the pickup and of, I should say, and of the delivery as well. And if something changes during the day, a trucker is delayed, there's a flat tire, different customer has a problem, has to stay longer on a different site, in a different state perhaps, she makes the adjustment directly on the display, which always gives her a complete and up-to-the-minute accurate picture of her world. She knows it, and so does everyone else. So this display, which is one, if I can use fancy language, one category of visual function. It's a function that supports the supervisor, these visual displays, visual scheduling boards. This is what she created. She had a vocabulary of visual devices. She chose this one
Now,
to
is
substitute. Go
this
ahead, please.
something that only the supervisor uses, or can the employees that are working there, can they move some of that information around, or do they just use it? Do the employees actually look at it, or is it strictly for the supervisor to use?
Oh, that's an interesting question. So in this particular case, it was just for her. But of course, automatically, by putting the information that she needs to know in this physical, visual format, everyone else sees the same information and has the scoop, knows what's happening up to the minute. If she were to involve other people in this display, so that they could change things, then there would need to be some kind of physical signal, a flag, a dot, that something has changed. So that people didn't have to inform you of the change. The board simply spoke and said, this has changed. Or
Okay.
maybe there would be some kind of a tracking device saying, I changed this, I changed that. But if it's being used communally, then you always need ownership, but you always need to visually show that the change happened. Otherwise, people won't pick up that subtlety. It's a great question.
And to me, that's a great, that helps me understand it better in the sense that the board speaks to the people that are using it.
Absolutely.
Let's take a look at this wire mold example. Christopher, can you show the third slide? So up on the screen is the whiteboard with only yellow. Can you just describe what we're looking at now?
This is a fantastic, first of all, it's a fantastic plant, wire mold. This is back in the about 1998, 99, just when, I'm sorry, his name escapes me, Art Byrne, just after Art Byrne left. And he created this incredible dynamic production system, but he also understood how to get people culturally involved in controlling their own work. And what we see here is kind of a before. It is a board, what I call a visual display board, that tracks the manufacture of tools. This was a machine-driven plant, and the tool department was always making new tools, new fixtures, new die, whatever. And what you see in the middle there, all that yellow, are the components of a tool being made. And if you read across the top, it says mill and process, heat treat, ready to grind, grind and process, jig grind, and then wire EDM, and then completion, etc. And this worked really, really well for the supervisor, the tooling manager in this department, in terms of his need to know. This was his first cut, his first iteration.
And then I think you have another.
Yeah, I'm gonna get to that in just a half a second. But the important thing here is he realized that he didn't have enough information. Even though he had a lot of information, he still needed to know something else. And what he needed to know was the pace, the timing of the movement of these tooling elements through the process. And so then now we're ready for that one.
All right, the next, okay, there we go. And so now the multicolored indicators are on display.
Right, so he's got these magnetic, he's got the same magnetics, but he has different colors because he wanted to know not just where they were and what they were, but how long they would be there, how long it would take for that particular component, the red component, the blue, the green, to make it through the entire process. He wanted to know what the cumulative time was, and he added this. So if it's red, it's going to take over 30 hours to move through this 8-part process. If it's yellow, it'll take under 30. But here's what's brilliant. He also said, if it's green, it's under 20, and if it's blue, it's under 10. So he added the dimension of time in enough, you could say, granularity or specificity for him to feel this sense of control. And this is what we want out of our displays. We want the supervisor to feel a sense of control over not just the schedules, but the problems in the schedule, the pace of the schedule, the bumps in the schedule, and that's what we're seeing here. It's absolutely brilliant.
It adds so much more when you add those different dimensions of color to it.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. And you can do other things as well. For example, there's a way, if he wanted to to determine what is today. How do I know that this is today or where today is? He could do that as well. You begin with your basic need to know, and this is throughout all visuality, whether you're a GM, a supervisor, an operator. What is your need to know? And what do I need to know right now that I don't know in order to do my work, whatever that work is? And when you find the answer to that question, you turn it into a visual device and you begin to build or populate your locus of control, be it a GM desk or whatever, or an operator bench, with the information that you need so you can pull it to you when and as you need it.
Well, excellent stuff. Absolutely excellent.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Well, thank you, Gwen. If you'd like to read Gwen's article, just click on the link below the video player to go straight to the article. And I think you'll find it not only interesting, but a highly innovative and different perspective on visuality.
Well, Gwen, thank you for joining us again. We'll see you down the road.
My pleasure indeed. Thank you.
We'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
Good interview there, Jeff. Thanks for that one. Visuality is always a good thing, definitely. And it's overlooked sometimes, too, I think.
No pun intended.
No pun intended. I didn't actually intend that one. That was good. All right. Well, early in the show, I took a look, speaking of overlooked, at a pair of articles by Bill Levinson and Barbara Cleary that addressed value and the need for companies to think about whether they're in business for the short term or the long term. Another perspective on this comes from a new voice to Quality Digest. In his article, Manipulating Consumers is Not Marketing, which appeared in Wednesday's issue of Quality Digest Daily, Hubert Gagnon of InSeed discusses the fine line between influence and manipulation. And when it comes to marketing, I can tell you that is a fine line indeed, many times. Gagnon writes that the term manipulation carries a negative connotation. He quotes terms such as underhanded, deceptive, abusive as synonyms for manipulation. Now, clearly no professional marketing professional of good standing would consider himself or herself in anything near those terms. However, political candidates, who are in many cases, as we've seen, master marketers, often resort to what we all have heard now as the dog whistle, in which they use emotional language, which is coded for multiple meetings, and they use that to communicate with small special interest groups. At the same time, they're speaking with broader audiences around the world or in their speeches. Many would consider dog whistle politics as falling into the manipulative category. Well, the term influencing, on the other hand, is a whole nother story. All marketers seek to influence, and there are many ways to do so. You could appeal to price or differentiators or cultural features to try to instill a sense of cool in your product or service. For centuries, this process has been a one-way street. Consumer goods companies launch product, and then their marketers found ways to, hopefully, for the sake of those companies, make those products irresistible to their customers. Today, however, the art of marketing is much more of a conversation between those who create products and services and those that use them. The rise of the internet and social media in particular means that real influence with customers very often resides in the keyboards of fellow customers. Sites like Yelp or TripAdvisor and thousands of others are digital forms of word of mouth that many times prove a heck of a lot more effective than simple advertising. Now, for those of us in media, we know this, we talk about it all the time. The term content is king. It's been abused for decades now, but the core message of content is king, I think, still rings true. Media companies need really good, really engaging articles, videos, images, etc., that use narrative conventions to communicate important ideas. That's what you, our reading or viewing customer, demands. For our other customers, our marketing partners, the idea is not to market or sell. Instead, we're trying to share stories about work and bottlenecks and opportunities, and we're trying to share solutions and present options. And from that, hopefully, both of our customers, both the users and their advertisers, can come together and they can make work flow better and they can improve quality. You know, there's an analogy that I always use. I mean, when you're a media company, what you're doing for a living is you're throwing a party. I mean, Quality Digest Daily, we're throwing a party every day, right? And what we really want to do is we really want to bring our guests together, have our guests meet each other and find out what each other does, and hopefully they'll become friends. And that's what we're trying to do. And when we say that we want to influence, I mean, I think it's fair to say that we want to influence. We want to influence our users to consider our marketers, our marketing partners, as perhaps the sources for their problems that they may have in their work life. And I think that's fair.
Oh, absolutely. And our readers have that expectation
Yeah.
that they'll be introduced to people.
Right. Right, because they have needs. I mean, it's not
Absolutely.
like, it's different in B2B than it is in B2C, where you have advertisers in a consumer publication. You really have to keep it as a church and state separation, because I mean, people that are reading People Magazine or Newsweek or whatever, it's more entertainment, aren't so much looking for a message from an advertiser. It still happens, what we call native advertising still happens, but it's much more subtle. We can say, well, hey, you have a problem, you have a bottleneck, and here's an advertiser of ours that offers a solution to that. Hopefully it's a good story that you want to read and helps you in your work life. And hey, when you have that need, check them out. Maybe you'll see that they're a good value, and you'll buy their product.
I think that one of the values we provide is we provide a context of the solutions that our advertisers provide.
That's right.
Because of the media wrapper that we present their information with.
Right. And again, is it influence? Yes. It's not manipulation. I never have ever felt that we're manipulating anybody by working with advertisers to present content, but it is influence, and the idea of that, and you as a consumer need to look at that as well and consider whether you're being influenced or you're being manipulated. And in the political realm, I think it happens a lot.
Oh, absolutely.
In media, I think it happens less, but media and politics are closely aligned anyway. So maybe it's happening all over anyway. But really good stuff there. I mean, all three of those stories really were, to my mind, very analogous. The one by Gagnon, the one by Cleary, and the one by Levinson were really analogous to one another. All right, well, that's going to be our show for the week. But before we go, we, of course, speaking of our marketing partners, we want to thank this week's sponsor. Mitutoyo Corporation is the world's largest provider of measurement and inspection solutions, offering the most complete selection of machines, sensors, systems, and services, with a line encompassing CMMs, vision, form, and finishing machines, as well as precision tools and instruments, and metrology data management software. Mitutoyo's nationwide network of metrology centers and support operations provides applications, calibration, service repair, and educational programs to ensure that there are more than 6,000 metrology products will deliver measurement solutions for their customers. So for more information, be sure to check out mitutoyo.com or click on the banner right just below or just to the right of this video player screen right down there somewhere. All right, well, that is our show for this week. Thank you all for joining us. Jeff, thank you for ably sitting in for Mr. Ducharme. He'll be back next week, we think, maybe. I don't know. We'll see if he shows up on Friday. But good show. And thank you for Gwen as well for joining us and talking to us about visuality.
Well, everyone, have a great, long, safe, wonderful Memorial Day weekend, and we'll see you next week.
That's right. We'll see you next week here at Quality Digest. Bye.